Welcome to the Hill here on NewsNation. As there is a standoff, by the way, at the southern border. The federal government says Border Patrol agents are being blocked in some areas from doing their jobs. So what is going on in Eagle Pass? We'll explain. Plus, the United States fires back. The commander-in-chief approving airstrikes against the Houthis in Yemen. Here in Washington, unusual coalitions are forming that are both defending and criticizing that decision. And as we just mentioned with Connell, my goodness, is it cold. So what does this mean for the Iowa caucuses on Monday? We'll get into it all. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. I'm Blake Berman, joined today by Michael Starr Hopkins, Democratic strategist, Nan Hayworth, the former Republican congresswoman from the state of New York, Kurt Bardella, Democratic strategist as well, and Lauren Wright, Princeton University political scientist. The Hill on NewsNation starts right now. All right, come on in. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Happy Friday to you all. We begin with this. Do not mess with our football whatsoever. Do not mess with it. That was the message this afternoon from the Democratic congressman from New York, Pat Ryan. He has written a letter to the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, and the president of NBC Sports, threatening the NFL because the Miami Dolphins, Kansas City Chiefs playoff game tomorrow night is being shown exclusively on NBC's streaming network, Peacock, the one you got to pay for. The congressman writing, quote, Congress granted the NFL an antitrust exemption in its broadcast deals with the expectation that you wouldn't use it to screw over fans. That was clearly a mistake. The congressman calls this, quote, bait and switch BS. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. That's what you're talking about. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. I mean, look, this is, I guess, smart politics, if nothing else, Kurt.
I mean, this is the voice of the fans here. Let's get this straight. Every time a team wants to build a new stadium, taxpayers are on the hook for that. How on earth are you going to take one of the most consequential games of the season, the wild card playoff game, and take it off television and make fans who've already paid in financial stadiums have to buy a subscription to a streaming service to watch a playoff game? Come on.
Every Thursday, though, the Amazon game.
So the Amazon game, right?
Who the heck is watching that?
What about this idea, though, of stripping the NFL from its antitrust exemption?
Yeah, I mean, I think
you're an attorney.
I think all sports teams should be stripped of antitrust exemptions. It's something that Major League has benefited from forever. And like Kurt said, people are done with it. You get these football teams that are using public money to finance their stadiums, to do these programs. Let the billionaires pay for it. In D.C., we're dealing with that problem right now with RFK Stadium.
You know this congressman. He's like your next-door neighbor, next district.
Yeah. I don't know him personally, but, I mean, look, I'm sure this is a politically popular issue. It's low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
So in that sense, understood. But it just, makes you think, okay, but don't you have a lot more serious stuff to deal with? What I really need you to do is vote on spending and taxes and relieving burdens, public safety and border security and all the rest. And your party's failing on every single one of those, sir. So I want to see action on that.
Maybe he should just buy Peacock.
You know, a few things unite Republicans and Democrats still, like sports and Congress. I remember
when I worked all the time.
When I worked at the Oversight Committee, the most heavily attended hearing that I've ever seen in my life was when they had Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa at the Oversight Committee with Henry Waxman and Tom Davis doing the steroids and baseball investigation.
200 million people watch the Super Bowl. This is like the last thing that many, many people watch.
So,
it is unmatched by any other type of event.
I'm glad you bring it up.
So tone deaf.
NFL viewership, 17.9 million is the average viewership right now for the NFL on linear. Peacock viewers, the game a couple weeks ago, 6.1 million, basically a third. The American Bar Association, by the way, wrote a huge, lengthy article about this idea of should the NFL be stripped from antitrust?
Because now lawyers or drinking establishments, because both are affected here.
So when the antitrust exemption was given, it was just traditional TV. Now you got to pay for the over-the-top stuff. And here's what they said. They said, as of now, the best option appears to allow fans to have access to the best of both worlds without any antitrust violations through simulcasting. Nevertheless, with technology ever changing, the next revolutionary NFL broadcasting agreement could be right around the corner.
This is the perfect example of how we're getting away from cable. I mean, as we all kind of unplug from
I love cable.
I love cable too.
I love being able to stream.
Keep watching us here.
It's a la carte. Exactly.
Yeah, I especially like a certain cable news station.
Yeah, right?
All right, so
I can watch it on the app.
interesting there from the congressman. We'll see where this goes. He's calling out the NFL. All right, meantime, elsewhere here in Washington, President Biden vowing to conduct more strikes against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels if they continue attacks in the Red Sea.
We will make sure that we respond to the Houthis as they continue this outrageous behavior, along with our allies.
That President Biden just moments ago. It comes, as you know, after the major overnight attack by the U.S. and the Brits against a series of targets linked to the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. Officials say the targets were all, quote, valid, legitimate military operations. Joining us now, the Massachusetts Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton. He is a member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman Moulton, good to talk to you again. Thanks for being back here on the Hill. You are an Iraq War veteran as well. I'm wondering when you learned of this and what you thought about it.
Well, I learned about it at the same time that everybody else in America did. And I think it's the right decision. It's a decisive move. These are proportionate, professional precision strikes against a terrorist organization that is terrorizing international shipping, attacking innocent, defenseless crews, just trying to get goods to market all across the globe. It's a serious threat. The administration is taking it seriously, and they've joined with an allied coalition of nations around the globe to say, we're going to put a stop to this, and we're going to prevent this from escalating into a wider regional war.
But, you know, there's even members of your own party who disagree with you, sir. For example, Congressman Ro Khanna responded to a tweet from Matt Gaetz. By the way, strange bedfellows on both sides. But basically saying that Congress should have been authorized, should have known about this. And you just told me you found about this like everyone else.
That's right. But actually, the president often takes action like this. He took action like this to respond to the attacks against U.S. troops in Iraq just a couple of weeks ago. And it's fully authorized under the War Powers Act. Actually, there are a couple of different provisions, but under the War Powers Act, the president is allowed to take this kind of action. He has 48 hours to notify Congress, and he has to cease the activity after 60 days before coming to Congress for permission to continue it. It's fully under the law. It's within the Constitution. And frankly, if he had gone to Congress first, I'm not sure we would have gotten our act together quickly enough to respond. This week in Congress, we couldn't even pass a procedural vote, the preliminary vote just to be able to vote yes or no on a bill under this dysfunctional Republican leadership. So I think there are a lot of reasons why the president took action on his own. It's constitutional. It was the right decision. And it sends a message to these terrorist groups in the Middle East that we're not going to stand for it.
I'm digging into my inbox here, Congressman, because the Pentagon has just put out a statement, and they say Secretary Lloyd Austin was actively engaged this week in overseeing and directing the U.S. military's participation in last night's multinational strikes. Secretary Austin, sir, as I mentioned, you are a veteran. We know what happened, how he kept the president, the White House, the administration, the American people in the dark about where he was and what he was going through. First off, do you feel that he should keep his job?
What he did is completely unacceptable. I can't imagine that happening at the lowest levels of the military chain of command, like where I was as a mere lieutenant, platoon commander in Iraq. I can't even imagine it happening when I was a 15-year-old busboy. I mean, if I was going to be out for a week, I had to tell my boss. So this is a major breakdown in the chain of command, and the commander-in-chief needs to make a decision here. It's up to the president as to whether he fires Secretary Austin, but I tell you what, he needs to send a decisive message that this is never going to happen again.
What would you do? I'm curious. If you had to make the call.
If I were the president of the United States, I would fire him in about 5 minutes.
Wow. Okay. And let me ask you this then. If he is, quote unquote, actively engaged in these operations, should he be?
Well, I'm not familiar with his medical condition. I mean, we all feel terrible for Secretary Austin and his family. I mean, my grandfather died of prostate cancer. It's a serious condition. We want to make sure he gets the medical attention that he needs. But what's most important is that America gets the national security that it needs and their troops get the supervision that they need. That's the Secretary's job.
Congressman Moulton, thanks again for being on back. We hope to have you again soon. Have a great weekend.
Good to see you.
Yep. Lauren, I wonder what you...
This is a little bit cynical, but I can't help but think one of the reasons this didn't go to a vote is because Democrats don't want to hash it out with their members who don't think we should defend ourselves at all against Iran or its proxies. And those like Congressman Moulton, who said this is a good, prudent decision, right. It's constitutional, and the president does have sweeping authority. I mean, that's a real divide, and it's very scary.
I mean, it is. So, you have Speaker Mike Johnson, Mitch McConnell, the top Republican in the Senate, and President Biden, all on the same page here.
Exactly.
And some Democrats, like Congressman Moulton, backing President Biden on this, but other Democrats saying, are none too thrilled about what happened.
That's right. And, no one would accuse Joe Biden on this issue of a knee-jerk reaction or doing something without thinking of it. Most of the criticism has been that he's let too much to happen. 75 attacks on our troops since October 17th by Iranian proxies. So,
which is exactly why he responded. Here,
right. Right.
What the problem is here is you have a speaker and Republicans who can't even vote to keep the lights on or take the trash out. So he couldn't take this to Congress. They had to respond quickly.
How would the former Republican congresswoman from New York have voted?
Well, I would.
If there was a vote,
I would have voted to support an attack on the Houthis. But here's the problem: this administration has funded effectively the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, all the Iranian proxy groups and pseudo-states through the cash flows that they've either directly provided to Iran, whatever justification there may be, or have facilitated through their lenience. It's a distinct turnaround. It's 180 degrees from what the prior administration did, and that is what has allowed them to do what they do.
So I'll leave you with this because they just told it to me in my ear. I guess the president has been asked about this, and he said Democrats who question him or question the decision are, quote unquote, wrong. So that is the stance from the president. By the way, Seth Moulton there said Lloyd Austin should have been fired in 5 minutes.
That's the news of the story right there. I mean, the fact that a Democrat is calling for him to be fired, there are not a lot of Democrats that are coming to the defense of Lloyd Austin in this situation. We all feel for him, but you cannot go AWOL,
right?
Yeah, there is no
defense. You can't defend the indefensible. Like, this is a very clear, this wasn't some kind of minor thing. Like, you had cancer that you're getting treated for. You're the Secretary of Defense. There are active military operations going on.
So pause for a second. I want to show just the timeline here for Lloyd Austin, the way all of this worked. Again, he has prostate cancer. The great news is he is expected to make a full recovery. Thank goodness. The timeline, December 22nd, he underwent surgery for prostate cancer. January 1st, he then had to was rushed back to the hospital, Walter Reed in this case, for quote-unquote severe pain. The White House did not know about this until January 4th. And at the time, the story was, my gosh, how did the White House not know for 3 days that the defense secretary was hospitalized, right? And we were all talking about this and lots of questions. And then on January 9th, 5 days later, we learned that even with all that, he still didn't tell his boss, the commander-in-chief, that he has cancer.
And his deputy was in Puerto Rico, and his secretary had the flu. I mean, what are we running here? A high school? This is the United States.
I mean, this is the kind of thing
because they promised transparency.
Right.
That's what makes it really, really bad.
Like
that was the message when they came in.
Yeah,
full
so
transparency.
One of the statements from him around, if it wasn't January 4th or right around there, January 5th, when they were trying to do some cleanup, was we're going to be transparent. And then 100 hours later, we find out, he's there, because he has cancer, which brings in the question, again, thank goodness he's going to make a full recovery, but doesn't the Secretary of Defense need to inform the Commander-in-Chief that he has cancer for reasons like this? Because we just went and struck Iranian back proxies in Yemen.
The bigger problem here, too, is this is the kind of thing that gives fodder when the right says Biden's too old, he's not up for the job, he's not really running the government. When your Secretary of Defense isn't telling you that you're going to be gone MIA for days because of a serious medical procedure, it kind of gets the critics like, why did you think it was not only that not to tell the commander-in-chief?
So let me ask you this, because we just heard Seth Moulton said he would have fired him in 5 minutes. To the two Democrats, you would have fired him, yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Coming up, have you heard about this? A showdown in the state of Texas. State officials there are preventing Border Patrol agents from accessing a busy migrant crossing area. So why is Texas telling the federal government and Border Patrol agents, we got this. You can't come here. Step back. Now the Department of Justice is responding, and he went to a classified briefing on UFOs this morning, Congressman Tim Burchett. So after that briefing, you see the steps there behind him. The congressman walked out of the Capitol, walked down the steps, and I talked to him. I said, what'd you hear? What'd you learn? My goodness, Tim Burchett was none too thrilled about that briefing. You'll hear the full interview when The Hill on NewsNation returns.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s message can be heard everywhere.
His words changed the nation.
And though you might not know where the words came from,
you can feel the truth behind them.
We're now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We're confronted with the fierce urgency of now.
The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. called us all to service.
Opportunities to serve those in need are all around you.
And every time you volunteer to read to a child, serve a hearty meal, or clean up a park in your comunidad, his message becomes a reality.
This January is your chance to let MLK's word inspire you to action.
Learn how you can volunteer for a better tomorrow on MLK Day at AmeriCorps.gov/MLK Day.
When it comes to consumer prices for food and for most products,
it is typical for prices to fall slightly in December.
And that's what they did. Agriculture Department economist Megan Schweitzer says that according to the new Consumer Price Index, overall inflation for all goods in the economy during December went down by 0.1%. And for food, same thing.
Food at home prices fell by 0.1% in December, and prices for food at home, or for groceries, were 1.3% higher than a year ago.
Which is an inflation rate far below the average yearly rate of about 2.5%. And in fact, for the 22 general food categories that Megan tracks,
we saw price decreases for 12 of them from November to December.
And several foods last month actually were selling for less than they did a year ago, including fish and seafood, dairy products, fresh vegetables, and eggs. Those egg prices down almost 24% from a year ago. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Thanks for listening to News Nation on the Go. I'm Connell McShane. Join me weekdays 3 to 5 on America's fastest-growing news channel.
A simple eye exam can catch eye disease before it affects your sight. Hi, I'm Dr. Griffin Rogers, Director of the National Institute of Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Diseases. Dr. Michael Chang, Director of the National Eye Institute here at NIH, explains.
Many eye diseases don't have early symptoms, so you may not recognize that you have a problem. The best way to track eye health is with a dilated eye exam. Your eye doctor will check for problems, give you eye drops to widen your pupils, and check for eye disease. This simple, painless exam can detect issues early when they're easier to treat and before they affect your vision. You'll need a dilated eye exam at least every 1 to 2 years if you're over age 60 or over age 40 if you're African American. You have a family history of eye diseases such as glaucoma, you have diabetes or high blood pressure. So talk to your doctor about an eye exam if you meet any of these criteria.
Follow us at NIDDK.gov. This is Dr. Griffin Rogers.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Did you know veterans enrolled in VA healthcare can use over 3,000 urgent care locations across the country to treat non-life-threatening conditions? It's easy and free. Just show your Veteran Health ID card. Get the best care for veterans. Sign up at va.gov, call 1-800-MyVA411, or visit your nearest VA medical center.
Medicare Benefits Review. You won't know what plan options are available to you unless you call, so call now. The call is free. Call 800-579-8194. 800-579-8194.
NewsNation Tonight, an On Balance special. Leland Vetter gives a preview of the Iowa caucuses, the first major event in the GOP calendar. What's at stake for the candidates and the direction of the Republican Party. Tonight at 7 Eastern, only on NewsNation.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. You are looking live right now, live shot Eagle Pass, Texas, where there is now a dramatic standoff between the state of Texas and the federal government. The Biden administration has now turned to the Supreme Court after Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered the National Guard there and state troopers in his state to block U.S. Border Patrol agents from a stretch of the Rio Grande in Eagle Pass. In a filing, the Justice Department claims that the move, quote, demonstrates an escalation of the state's measures to block the Border Patrol's ability to patrol or even surveil the border. All right, the basic thinking here is that the federal government, Lauren, Nan, isn't doing enough at the border. So Texas, we're going to take this into our own hands. You got a problem with it?
It's not going to go anywhere good, but it should not have happened in the first place. And the reason it's happening is because the Biden administration has been extremely confusing, inconsistent on the immigration issue. They have simultaneously fought to keep some Trump policies in court, more deportations, for instance, while also blaming Republicans and then saying they want publicly funded programs for migrants.
But isn't this
no one can make heads or tails of it.
Isn't this a wild concept, though, of federal government, you step aside, states,
Yes,
we got
it
this?
is.
I mean,
Right,
immigration is a federal issue, is it not?
But it's a public safety issue in the state of Texas. It is an unusual burden on the citizens of Texas, both in terms of expenditures on social welfare benefits for whatever time or duration these migrants who are present illegally remain in the country, and also in terms of public safety. So I think that's the state of Texas's argument. Your federal government is putting us at risk.
So what about what they're saying, right? Biden administration essentially has failed at the southern border.
This is an institutional failure. Democrats certainly haven't helped, but Republicans haven't come to the table to actually have a real deal on immigration. The last time we came together, Republicans backed out on a deal. Now we're seeing the consequences of this. But Democrats and Republicans have to come together and do this. Democrats need it for Democrats politically need this. We need this off the table coming into the election.
But why do you think it's happening in the first place? You don't think there's anything to do with the poll factors that started on the 2020 Democratic campaign trail?
No, I think
immigration has been going
border.
on for 2 decades. We've been having the same conversation about immigration now forever. And the one time we came close to a deal, the McCain-Kennedy bill, Republicans were the ones who tanked it because the right went absolutely nuts over the word, quote, amnesty. That bill never happened. No compromise ever happened. I mean, we came from a place as a party, as a former Republican, where we once talked about compassionate conservatism. That's what George W. Bush preached. He was someone who wanted an immigration bill to be the centerpiess of his administration's accomplishments, and it ended up not really happening because of Republicans. Reagan granted the 86 Simpson-Mazzoli amnesty bill in the first place.
But when negotiations break down, both sides can be blamed for the breakdown.
Sure, but just don't say that it's Democrats.
This is a failure of both.
But right now it's a Democrat administration, and Trump did have certain policies like remain in Mexico.
I thought Mexico was building us a wall to fix all this.
And they were going to pay for it. They were going to pay for it.
Where's the check to pay for it?
That is a digression. Trump actually did build some wall. It wasn't enough.
But Mexico was supposed to pay for it. He said it over and over and over again.
This is the best snapshot of this to me.
Exactly.
Trump had a horrible child separation policy. Laura Bush wrote an op-ed. Ivanka said it was the most embarrassing, lowest moment of the administration. Biden's approval rating is the same as when Trump rolled that out and everyone was absolutely furious with him. Right. That is how upset people are at the Biden administration about immigration.
Let me wrap this up this way. This is the debate.
This is it.
Right? Yeah. And this is why, in part, I think it's gotten to where it is in Texas. All right, speaking of Texas, have you seen this? The movement for Texas independence suffered a major blow. The state Supreme Court declining to hear a challenge to the Texas Republican Party's refusal to include the, quote, Texit petition on the March primary ballot. The group Texas National Movement has been pushing to make Texas an independent nation, Nan.
Yeah, it is.
You're laughing.
It is the Republic. It is the Republic, but once you sign in, once you sign up to be part of the United States, you're locked in. But I want to just mention one thing apropos of Texas. The Flores consent decree was what the Trump administration finally decided to enforce, and that was why children were separated. Because of the Flores consent decree, which was actually an Obama administration policy. But that irrespective of that, Texas cannot just decide itself.
Let me just say, let's get that federal money back then if Texas wants to. Let's see how that works.
There you go.
Yeah, that's got 97,000 signatures. There's 30 million people there.
All right, if the Cowboys win the Super Bowl, they can become their own state.
Yes, right.
All right. What were we saying? 30 million people and
97,000 signatures. Not enough.
From
Not
Texas
quite.
to Iowa, and my goodness. Live look, I believe. Do we have it? Field of Dreams in Dyersville. GOP presidential candidates making their holy.
Whoa.
My gosh.
Ugh.
That is the scene in Iowa right now. One of the reasons why we're showing this to you, I mean, this could have a major impact on the Iowa caucuses on Monday. Kelly Meyer is standing by live for us. She's all bundled up. We're going to go to her on the other side of the break on what she's feeling. And, Ron DeSantis was all about, speaking of Iowa, sort of what books should be in classes and in schools in Florida. And now one county in Florida says, you know what? We have to examine the dictionary. The ultimate troll. On the other side of the break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the Hill. Iowa seeing bone-chilling cold weather, dangerous roads. It feels like -9 right now. That is a live look at Johnson County, Iowa. That is the campus of the University of Iowa. Republican hopefuls canceling most of today's in-person campaigning. Think about that. This is everything that they've built their campaigns up for, and the weather is so bad and so treacherous, they're just saying, we can't do it. Nikki Haley resorting to telephone town halls, for one example. Kelly Meyer, come on in. She is in downtown Des Moines. I owe you a bottle of wine, Kelly, because we brought you on to talk about...
I love you, Blake, but I don't know.
God.
I brought you on to talk about what you're feeling.
She looks great.
She does look great.
It.
What's it like there, and what are people saying, Kelly? Talk to me.
I mean, there's really not much around. There's not a lot of people around right now. I see some snow plows. The roads are still pretty bad, which I'm actually surprised. I thought Iowa would be better at clearing the roads, but the roads are rough. As you said, they canceled the campaign events today. They just couldn't get folks to go out there, and it's pretty much shut down. A lot of the restaurants just closed down, so you can't really get food around here, and it's cold right now, but it's only going to get colder. I was looking at my phone, and I was shaking it, trying to be like, is this real? Is this what it's going to be? -17 as a low tomorrow. It's going to be -2 on Monday night, caucus night, with a low of -17. So it's only going to get colder. But we were talking with voters, and they say, they're used to this, so they might head out on caucus night. So take a listen to this.
I like being out in this weather because, like I said, being an Iowan, we're used to this weather, and so as a native Iowan, this is kind of what we go through, and it doesn't complete a year without something like this.
And Blake, it's actually so cold in here, I think the birds are seeking refuge in the parking garage near us, just tweeting over here, because they are also freezing their butts off out here. So we'll toss it back to you.
Who's your photographer, Kelly?
Kyle
Watkins. Thanks, Kyle. We appreciate it. Kelly Meyer, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Have fun this weekend. Yep. All right. So there's the weather. This is obviously impacting Iowa. Advantage who? Because you would think maybe this might suppress voter turnout? Or no, you don't think so?
I don't think voter turnout effects are ever really more than 2 to 3 percentage points on average, and Iowans are used to extreme weather. In 2008, they had record turnout, and it was double-digit negatives. So I don't expect a big difference. I do think DeSantis and Haley should get some snowshoes on and throw a Hail Mary and get out there. I don't know. We'll see
I think
how
this is
desperate everyone is.
This is going to hurt DeSantis. I think he already has an enthusiasm problem.
Okay.
And if he takes your advice, the more people that meet Ron DeSantis, the less that like him. His numbers keep going down.
They have a big transportation operation. He said they have a plan. They have contingencies to get people there to the caucus.
If anyone knows about environmental disasters,
I think the winner's
Florida
Donald
governor
Trump here,
yeah.
folks.
You think so?
Yeah.
He handles
come on.
them.
So you mentioned Donald Trump. We had Jason Miller, senior advisor, on the show yesterday. Can we show the polling real quick? Because the latest poll, Suffolk University there in Iowa, shows Donald Trump up by 34, right? And we've heard Donald Trump talk about his leads, 30s, 40s, 50s, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But when we asked Jason yesterday about, well, are you going to crack 50%? I found it interesting that this was his response.
The fact of the matter is a win is a win. 12 points is the record. No one has ever in the modern era for a contested primary contest going into caucus night actually won by more than 12, and no one has cracked 50%.
That man is expectation setting.
Yeah, absolutely. And very smart. It's much better to do that than to look. Republicans saw what happened in the 2022 midterms, and we were
promised 70-seat red wave.
Hillary saw it in 2016. I think it was Princeton University. Yeah, predicted 99% chance she was going to win. So he's
not me.
No, of course not. No, not Professor Wright.
I know who it was though.
Donald Trump supporters will crawl over glass to vote for him.
Right.
So they will turn out. It doesn't matter what the weather is.
I think he's the one.
Okay. By the way, with the freezing temperatures in Iowa, voters may want to stay indoors. And one restaurant there that they could head to. This is what they're serving up, for example. A zombie burger restaurant in downtown Iowa announcing their caucus menu special to entice customers. Today, for example, is Mama Swami's spaghetti. Tomorrow will be Meatball Ron. Caucus, that's kind of mean.
Yeah, right.
Caucus Monday will have Day One Dictator. Invoking recent comments made by former President Trump. All specials are $15.99.
I'm just reading that third girl.
There's also, by the way, Sleepy Joe and Dark Brandon shades.
I'm trying to get a Dark Brandon shade.
$9 each.
Wow.
Just sort of getting you in the mood there for Iowa. All right. By the way, we will also have special coverage of the Iowa caucuses tonight. Leland Vittert live from Des Moines. Chris Cuomo, Dan Abrams, Elizabeth Vargas will also join him starting at 8 p.m. Eastern right here only on NewsNation. Now, from the Arctic tundra, that is Iowa, right now to Florida, where a school district in the state's panhandle has removed more than 1,600 books from its library shelves. The books are under review for compliance with the state's sex education law that went into effect last summer. Now, that law prohibits sex education and books describing sexual content to students in 5th grade or below. Okay, it was quite controversial, as you might imagine, something that Ron DeSantis, speaking of the Iowa caucuses, was pushing. Now, books under review in Escambia County include 5 dictionaries, 8 encyclopedias, the Guinness Book of World Records, biographies of Beyonce and Oprah Winfrey, Bill O'Reilly's books, Killing Jesus and Killing Reagan, and Anne Frank's diary. I saw this, the dictionary, what's going on here? Is this just a straight troll?
No, this is really serious, and this is something some conservatives are pushing for, and it's absolutely idiotic, because what happens when you ban some things, or it's in the eye of the beholder what's offensive, what's violent, what's pornographic, and it doesn't take a big imagination for conservatives to imagine liberals using the same tools against them.
This is some form of a troll, though, right? I mean, there is, in theory, sexually explicit or sexual content in the dictionary. Right? Like definitions of words all over the place.
That's the point. Is you could make this point about any book, any piece of material. And also the problem is that we're not reading. 20% of Americans are illiterate. The kids are not reading, period. That's the major issue. And 54% of Americans have a 6th grade reading level. They can find whatever they want online. That's the bigger issue. It's even bigger than social media. Books in libraries are not the issue.
Bless their heart. We actually need more kids to pick up dictionaries, encyclopedias, Diary of Anne Frank. Like, this is an area where I think Republicans missed the mark, and all these claims about Democrats being snowflakes, but you have Republican governors now banning books that we're not talking about.
So these ones are under review. But let me ask you this: as Michael, did you miss the mark? Did your party miss the mark on this?
Actually, that law was promulgated to prevent sexualized content for up to 3rd grade, I thought it was, although apparently 5th grade now. I think it may have been 3rd grade, but it was the Florida legislature had to pass that law in order for Governor DeSantis to sign it. And as I recall, at least a plurality of Democrats, a plurality of Democrats also supported that law. Okay, and no book is being banned. Books have always been selectively admitted to school libraries.
If you're explaining, you're losing.
I'm not arguing that those books are books that should be excluded from school libraries.
People take it too far.
Well,
and they're idiotic.
That's
and
on
in the
local
digital age, the idea that we're going to stop the spread of certain information or words or phrases when kids everywhere you look have a phone and a tablet in their hand, unless you're going to ban Google from existence and YouTube, good luck.
Fair enough, but I think there's something to be said for schooling that keeps kids somewhat protected. And the writer Corey.
But I thought Republicans are against the nanny state. Like, this is the epitome of it.
I want to let Nan finish.
Republicans are for school choice on the part of parents and not dunning taxpayers. for public schools that don't work for them. So that's where Republicans are, and they're right about that. And the writer Corrie ten Boom once described how her father had said, there are some burdens, he said it to her when she was a child, there's some burdens I don't want you to have to bear. And I think we have to bear that in mind when we're talking about
I wish
children.
Republicans cared as much about kids getting killed in schools as it did about the words in the dictionary.
Okay, I'll let you respond to that. Because I mean...
They don't.
That's silly.
They don't.
No, that's...
What are you here for, the kids?
All right, let me just ask you a question. Who advocates for school resource officers? Members of which party overwhelmingly?
I remember that there were a bunch of resource officers and security folks at Uvalde, and they didn't show up. They actually did the opposite.
This is exactly what causes everybody to kind of tune out to it, though, because we end up having these book discussions that become these larger, purely political things.
I'm responding to the
Here was Bill O'Reilly, and I'll leave you with this. He said, if Florida County removes my books, killing Jesus and killing Reagan from school libraries, preposterous. We are investigating and seeking comment from Governor DeSantis. This will not stand. Bill O'Reilly's books under review. All right. Coming up here, there was a classified UFO briefing today in Congress, up on Capitol Hill. After that happened, one member of Congress, Congressman Tim Burchett, walked out. I met him on the steps of the Capitol, and I asked him, were you satisfied, Congressman? What did you hear? What comes next? Our interview with Tim Burchett after that classified briefing on the other side of the break. And be sure to check out our weekly newsletter, Decision Desk 2024, my campaign view. I know that guy. There's the QR code if you would like to subscribe, top right of your screen. Monday, we'll have it in your inbox, what we're looking forward to with the Iowa caucuses. The Hill returns on the other side of the break. Earlier today started to take critical steps towards transparency surrounding UAPs. They've really been doing it for a while. But the latest move happened with a closed-door classified briefing up on Capitol Hill. Republican Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett, one of the top lawmakers probing the issue. He shared his frustrations with me about what he heard behind closed doors. Watch. So you just came from the briefing. Were you satisfied at what you heard? I know you.
No, my biggest thing all along, it's obviously a lot of folks want to. It's little green men, it's flying saucers. Right. My concern is the tens of millions, if not billions, of dollars that we've invested in the research of this issue since 1947 that we know of, and yet the federal government keeps telling Congress they don't exist, and yet. Obviously, they're investigating something. So you think? And then when I have an admiral tell me they're real, when I have some of the top pilots in the world say they're real, I don't see why American taxpayers can't get that information.
So you think there have been billions potentially in government money that's been spent on developing something, or
I'd like to know that. Are they developing something, or have they recovered something that has allowed them to spend this much money?
When you come out of that briefing, what questions do you have?
I end up with more questions
every time, or just
yeah, always, because I always say it's like looking down the barrel of a .22 rifle. They are very specific in what they know, and it is very compartmentalized. It's like Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which I don't represent, but over 6,000 folks that work there live in the 2nd Congressional District that I represent. And they, during the Second World War, over 2,000 people were working on the bomb, and less than a half a dozen knew what they were working on, because it was so compartmentalized. I mean, husbands and wives did not know. Brothers and sisters who worked at the lab did not know because of that compartmentalization. And that's carried over into this. So say it was a recovered craft in 1947 at Roswell, New Mexico. Every person that was involved in that is dead now. And it's been passed on and passed on and passed on. And now with these private contractors who you and the press and we as Congress cannot access because they're not under FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, because they have passed it on to a private contractor. And is that by design? I don't know. But I still think we need to ask some questions, and we need to know some answers. Dadgummit, it's just going on too long. And there's no excuse for not giving us other than arrogance.
I hear you on asking questions, and that's part of your job, obviously. But I'm wondering beyond that, what comes next in your view?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm going to be working with the chairman. And since I'm not chairman of this so-called subcommittee, it is a subcommittee, I'm going to be working with them to get us an excellent list of witnesses for this next hearing. And I'm not going to release them because the last time I did that, the folks were literally told not to come.
By who?
We were told by NASA, a quasi branch of NASA, other groups. They claimed they didn't do it, but the folks told me they did. And we'd asked over a dozen folks, that's 12. And we ended up with 3 excellent witnesses that put their love of this country over the love of themselves. Because obviously Grush was ridiculed. He was outed as somebody that had PTSD. And in East Tennessee, we don't make fun of people because they served their country and suffered from it. We celebrate those people, and we try to get them and support them. But in Washington, D.C., they destroy those people. And that just shows the ruthless nature, and that shows that we are over the target, that we have, as I was told, I have kicked a hornet's nest at the Pentagon.
I know you got a flight to catch, so we'll leave it there. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Elizabeth Vargas, wow, come on in. There was a lot there from Tim Burchett after that classified briefing.
You think? Great job getting him on their way out. I know everybody's sort of scattering to try and get home before all these storms hit across the country. Really interesting that he's now reluctant to release a future witness list because of witness intimidation he says he's suffered. But listen, every single one of these congressmen came out of that skiff today and said, I believe Grush now even more. So his stock and credibility certainly seems to have risen as a result of what was happening in this skiff. Listen, something was communicated there, Blake. They didn't all file into a skiff only to have the inspector general, the intelligence community say, there's nothing there. So they talked about something.
Skiff is the secret place that you go where you can't bring your phones, no technology, et cetera, where you get the most, highly sensitive information.
It's classified information. And unfortunately, we're all out in this loop here because Grush told us first on NewsNation and then Congress, listen, this is happening. There's a top secret program studying this stuff. And I can't tell you anymore because it's classified. And the congressmen can't come out and say anything either because it's classified. So we're stuck in that loop.
It struck me, though, when he said, my concern is the tens of millions, if not billions of dollars that we've invested in research on this since 1947. That's when I was like, wait a minute.
1947?
And billions of dollars? What do you mean there, Congressman?
Yeah, well, I think they're going to be obviously digging into this a lot more because... Listen, we are the taxpayers. We are funding this. We get the secrecy that is needed for national security. But at some point, you can't keep something like this hidden. And according to what he seemed to be saying, and the other congressman, too, this could be going on now for decades, that this is still a secret. It's pretty remarkable.
What do you got coming up tonight on Elizabeth Vargas Report?
Well, we have a lot more on that, as well as the record-breaking cold and how that might affect things in Iowa.
Did you see Kelly Meyer's live shot with us?
It's unbelievable. This really is going to be the coldest caucus on record. And I know that President Trump keeps saying, my supporters will walk over glass to vote for me. They might have to almost. It's going to be really, really hard. But also, listen, we're going to have a very, very important interview with a mother whose son died of suicide after seeing things on TikTok. And it's an important thing for every parent in this country with a teenager who is having a mental health crisis of any kind and the dangers of what social media can do to those kids. It's really, really important.
All right. Elizabeth Vargas reports 7 minutes from now here on NewsNation. Have a great show, Elizabeth. Thank you. And she'll be talking to Ross Coldhart on all of this as it relates to what happened up on the Hill earlier today. Before we go, though, no laughing matter. Why the feds are now cracking down. You know those highway signs, you're on the road and you're like, haha, that's funny, cute message. Are those about to go? Final thoughts from the panel on the other side.
NewsNation tonight, an On Balance special. Leland Bitter gives a preview of the Iowa caucuses, the first major event in the GOP calendar. What's at stake for the candidates and the direction of the Republican Party? Tonight at 7 Eastern, only on NewsNation.
right, so before we say goodbye, here's a story that caught our eye. Your daily commute could get a little less fun with iconic road signs like these potentially disappearing in Iowa, for example. This sign on the left reading, "Is this heaven? No, it's Iowa. Travel safely." In the state of Mississippi, the sign reference a Taylor Swift song, "Texting and driving, say it. I'm the problem. It's me." Federal highway administrators, though, want to pump the brakes on humorous highway signs because they can be distracting. Good idea, or sort of the Grinch here?
Like, we need a little humor in our lives, especially while you're driving in traffic.
Yeah, not like we don't have a road rage problem in this country at all. Like, imagine diffusing that with some humor, God forbid.
We all need a little Taylor Swift in our lives.
The point is they're supposed to be distracting because there needs to be a message there.
Yeah.
And they don't know that this is more harmful than helpful.
All right. Okay. All right. They want those signs gone, by the way, in 2 years. By the way, a reminder, we will have special coverage of the Iowa caucus on Monday night here on NewsNation. Leland Vittert live from Des Moines, Chris Cuomo, Dan Abrams, Elizabeth Vargas also join him starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, only here on NewsNation. Thank you all for being here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Thank you for watching at home. Set your DVR to watch us if you need to, 5 o'clock Eastern. Hello to all of you on SiriusXM, by the way. We'll be back on Monday.